Coming up on Network Africa, Ethiopia continues with its clampdown on dissent, sentencing 2 journalists alongside 18 other Muslims who have been convicted of terror-related charges. Scores of migrants are rescued from an overcrowded rubber boat found drifting on the Mediterranean Sea. Transport sector. Let's begin Network Africa. Hello everyone, welcome again to 2017. I am Amarachi Ubani. Today on the program we begin in Ethiopia, a country with poor human rights record and a penchant for clamping down on dissent and freedom of speech. So it was no surprise authorities today sentenced 2 journalists alongside 18 other Muslims to prison after being convicted of terror-related charges. The journalists, 26-year-old Khalid Mohammed Ahmed and 48-year-old Darsima Sori Bankash from Radio Bilal, were sentenced to 5 years and 6 months, respectively. The group was first charged in 2014 and convicted last month, according to reports in the newspapers. But in August 2015, a court sentenced 18 Muslims, including clerics and a journalist, to up to 22 years in prison under controversial anti-terrorism legislation. They were arrested 3 years ago over protests against alleged government interference in religious affairs. The VOA's Salam Solomon joins us from Washington with more on this. Salam, I'm glad you could join us on Network Africa. A Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you too.
So what's the reaction to this announcement, the sentencing of the journalists and the other Muslims today?
Well, you know, Ethiopia has been using the 2009 infamous anti-terrorism proclamation and also a 2004 penal code to stifle dissent and jail journalists and political opposition members. And so this is a continuation of what Ethiopia has been doing in the past. And last September, the beginning of Ethiopia's calendar, meaning Ethiopia's New Year, over 700 prisoners in celebration of the Muslim holiday Eid were released. And so the reaction has been, it's a continuation of what the government has been doing so far.
Now, for the journalists, were there specific participation, were there, a reference to a specific participation for them in these terror-related charges? Were they spelled out?
As I said, the anti-terrorism proclamation has been used to stifle dissent and mostly targeting journalists. The most famous case of Zone 9 bloggers is something to look at in the past year. They have jailed many journalists because of that. But these 2 journalists among 20 Muslims who were found guilty, the charges include organizing and communicating, including via telephone with what they call our terrorist organizations, or try to recruit members to resort to violence. And so basically, the act of doing your job is what it seems like. Reporters talk to different sources, and so that's one of the accusations that we're seeing. But mostly, those charges are similar, and they always talk about talking to terrorist organizations is labeled as under the terrorism law, makes them a target.
No surprise there. Now, these 20 people, Salam, are possibly just a fraction of the number of people authorities have in their custody, whom they will, of course, assign different charges to. But could we perhaps witness more court action on these next set of people, hopefully in the next coming days?
Well, as you said, the case has been ongoing. It started in 2014. Some Muslim members of the same committee have been released last year. And despite being, charged for 22 years, all of a sudden exonerated and then told to go home. This has been the case in the past. But, you know, Ethiopia is undergoing a very, very interesting time right now. The country is under state of emergency following a lot of protests. Some of the charges that we're seeing on right now, and those who are found guilty, is also, organizing protests and giving out leaflets and things of that nature, and also talking to terrorist groups. These charges are very sketchy and so, we're going to see more of this in the coming year, but it's been ongoing since 2014.
Thanks a lot, Salam, for bringing us up to speed, and we do appreciate your reporting today on Network Africa.
Thanks for having me.
Meanwhile, it seems U.S. President-elect Donald Trump is not the only one in the wrong for talking to Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen. South African Mayor Solly Msimanga also seems to have made the diplomatic faux pas. The government has accused the mayor of Tshwane, which includes the capital, Pretoria, of breaching its One China policy by visiting Taiwan last month. The first opposition member to be elected, Tshwane Mayor Msimanga, has defended the visit, saying it was aimed at drumming up investor support. But according to the country's Foreign Affairs Department, South Africa and the United Nations do not recognize Taiwan as a sovereign state, and the country's liaison office in Taipei is only meant for people-to-people contact. Taiwan's political and legal status is connected to whether the island and Penghu should become unified with the territories of mainland China under the rule of the People's Republic of China. However, Taiwan, otherwise known as the Republic of China, is recognized by 20 countries in the United Nations and the Holy See. Over in the Gambia, sit-tight President Yahya Jammeh is accusing ECOWAS of effectively declaring war. This is all related to a fallout of the country's presidential election on December 1st, in which real estate tycoon Adama Barrow was declared winner. President Jammeh is contesting the result and is appealing to the Supreme Court to have them cancelled. ECOWAS, on the other hand, is standing solidly behind the winner, promising to use force to remove Mr. Jammeh from power when his term expires this month.
Gambian leader Yahya Jammeh accuses Economic Community of West African States of declaring war on him after it says the regional body is putting forces on alert in case he refuses to step down at the end of his mandate this month. Jammeh, who has vowed to stay in power despite losing in December one election to rival Adama Barrow, also promised to defend Gambia against any outside aggression in a New Year's speech broadcast on state TV. The veteran leader initially conceded defeat in the vote, then changed his mind days later, raising fears that regional powers might have to intervene to oust him. His mandate runs out on January the 19th. Marcel de Souza, Commission President for the ECOWAS, says he had put standby forces on alert. In his speech, Jammeh decried the decision of ECOWAS on the current situation to implement the results of December 1, 2016 presidential election by whatever means possible, apparently acknowledging again that the poll did not go in his favor.
What is clearly incontrovertible is that the decision of ECOWAS on the current situation to implement the results of the December 1st, 2016 election by whatever means possible is totally illegal, as it violates the principle of non-interference in the internal affairs of member states.
Barrow's surprise victory and Jammeh's initial decision to concede after 22 years in power was seen as a moment of hope on the continent, where autocratic leaders are becoming more deep-seated, but the president changed his mind a week later.
Meanwhile, Deputy Leader in Libya's Government of National Accord, Musa Al-Koni, has resigned. He said he was resigning because the UN-backed administration has failed to tackle urgent problems arising from years of conflict and political disarray. His resignation now casts a doubt on the future of the government in its current form. This is a government launched just over a year ago under a UN-mediated deal that had only partial support from Libya's rival factions.
Of course, this was all our own failure. We let down many without going into too much detail. I admit that we failed in running the country for several reasons. The first being that we in the Presidential Council did not pick one another. We only chose the members of the government, however, are not responsible for the actions of our conflicting colleagues. We are not united, and this isn't a secret. We stood powerless to take brave decisions. We were not brave enough to take bold decisions. We have no authority over institutions, especially the central bank. Everyone speaks a different language. I announced to the Libyan people my resignation from the Presidential Council because I have failed, and I apologize to the Libyan people for my failure. This doesn't clear my responsibility in the failure as an official in charge. I am responsible for the period I spent, whether it be a collective responsibility or individual.
We're not moving very far from Libya, but we're staying very close by with Europe's growing migrant crisis. Some more migrants still trying to make that trip across the Mediterranean Sea, and just a few of them actually succeeding. Spanish authorities said they rescued at least 112 migrants they found drifting at sea after the engine of their small rubber boat failed. They were about 36 miles off the Libyan coast. The Spanish NGO Proactiva Open Arms had responded to the migrants' distress call. Among those rescued were 2 pregnant women and 5 children. The United Nations says as many as 5,000 migrants are believed to have drowned in the Mediterranean Sea in 2016, while the International Organization for Migration says more than 242,000 migrants and refugees entered Europe by sea in 2016.
Fred, I told her that today I'm going to live in this sea. I was afraid. That's why we try by all means to call you.
Today we are the rescue in the center of Central Mediterranean of 112 people, 7 girls and 5 children, and quite rough sea. 4-0.
Let's visit Nigeria, with the recession biting harder, unemployment rate at 13.9%. The federal government has begun payment of 5,000 naira a month to 1 million people who have been classified as most vulnerable. Now, according to the Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity to the Vice President, Mr. Laulu Akonde, this is being done through conditional cash transfer of his social investment programs. 9 states will be covered in the first batch, and many of the beneficiaries have already begun receiving payments. Renowned economist Gabriel Idahosa joins us now for some analysis on this. Mr. Idahosa, I'm glad you could join us. Welcome to Network Africa and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Marissa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We spoke about this earlier. What do you make of this move by the federal government? Does it seem right given the present economic challenges?
The 5,000 per person for 1 million people comes to 5 billion naira per month. And that is, at the end of 1 year, 60 billion injected into the economy at the low level of the consumer economy. There is the poorest of the poor, so to say, who will spend that money on very basic needs, like clothing, like food, like essential medicine. If somebody has malaria or typhoid and he needs 1,000 naira to go to the nearest pharmacy and doesn't have it, and could be exposed to even death because of that kind of money, would find the 5,000 extremely useful. So that is a major injection into the consumer economy.
But, Mr. Idahosa, how long do you think the government can sustain this if we have to go a whole year and we have to take out a large chunk of money to pay a group of people we refer to as most vulnerable? How long can the government sustain this?
Well, that's the key word, sustainability. There's no point starting it if government cannot sustain it. The fact that they have started presupposes that they are committed to pushing this through at least for 1 year, and that they have put that in the budget. If it is not sustained for the whole year, then it will be a real waste of whatever is done in 1 or 2 months. you need to sustain it for that 1 year at least to make an impact in the economy and in the life of the individual. Because an enterprising and ingenious person who has a little skill, even if just knitting or selling garnet or hairdressing or something, that is sure 5,000 naira a month for 12 months, can do something with it.
Yeah.
So without sustainability, it is not worth starting at all.
Mr. Gebeli Dahosa, I really appreciate you joining us on Network Africa. Well, still ahead on the program, analysts say there was a lot of improvement in Africa's transport sector. The review is up next after the break.